In most of the cases, we are nominated for 3 years, sometimes 5 years, sometimes it's an undefined contract, but we have to produce what we call artistic and cultural projects. Projet artistique et culturel. If we apply to a job, we have to produce this document and to propose it. And once the nomination is done, the director has the freedom to program for 3 years and to achieve his or her artistic project. The project is written. The project is also included in the partnership contract that we sign with the public partners for the funding of the institution. And it's on the basis of this project that the director will develop his or her program. After 3 years, we evaluate if the program has been done or not, and for which reasons it has not been done, and what could we improve, what could be changed for the next contract. In my case, I'm a director of La Galerie Noisy-le-Sec. La Galerie is a contemporary art center in Noisy-le-Sec, which is in the suburbs of Paris. It's northeast Paris, in an area which is very poor. It's one of the poorest regions in France. And we are hosted in a mansion house of the 19th century in the middle of social housing towers. It's a very specific context, and I built my artistic program in relation to this specific context. It's one of the smallest art centers in France in terms of space, so I'm very limited in terms of space. We have quite a good funding, and we have quite a good way of working, a good team. So the most important thing being to have a freedom of programming. I can be very pleased in what I do in Noisy-le-Sec because I have a lot of freedom, which I think you cannot have so much freedom in big institutions, big museums, where you have to propose an exhibition 2 years in advance, 3 years in advance. You never know if it will be accepted or not. In my case, I do a very flexible program. I program only 1 year in advance, but still sometimes I have more flexibility and I can also swap things. If you look at each exhibition, there are never thematic shows. There are always shows in which the works are never formally related, because in each show there are a lot of different media, and the works are very often contained. There is very little to see, and I'm very interested in this power of evocation. I'm very much interested in works in which you can see the process. I don't mean the process, material process or how it is done, but I mean the thinking process to arrive to this result. I'm very much interested in the way you can see, or even if you cannot see, but you can feel this process of thinking in the work itself. Since 1982, that the first FRACs were funded by the state in partnership with the regions. And so the FRACs means Fonds Régional d'Art Contemporain. They are regional collections, and the idea was to create in each region, there are 22 regions in France, in each region there would be a regional collection with no space. It was only a fund with a collection and a storage. And the aim of the FRACs were to promote contemporary art by buying works, but also to make the collection tour in the regions, in different places which were not art venues. In the 90s, the FRACs started to have some spaces for exhibitions. So it is what we called frac of second generation fracs. They started to build exhibition venues, and now there is what we call fracs of the third generation, because some fracs already moved in new buildings and they know some developments in their way of working. There was a big change in the way of functioning of the fracs, is that they started producing works. And so whereas their main activity was first to acquire and to make the collection visible in the region, they started producing at the end of the 90s, early 2000s, I think because they also wanted to curate exhibition, to have the same role as art centers. And I think the frac is in between a museum and an art center. I think until very recently, there was really a shift, a separation, a clear separation between the market and the public institutions in France. Now we have to create and reinvent new strategies to also challenge the model of the institution, but also just basically to get some funding. The market as such has been very much developed recently in France. I think it's also due to the opening of Palais de Tokyo in 2002, at the same time as Le Plateau Frac Île-de-France also opened in 2002. So two institutions were founded in Paris the same year, and it changes also the contemporary art scene in Paris, in the sense that Paris became again a place where foreign curators, foreign critics, professionals would come to discover contemporary art in France. You know, this model of new institution that Nicolas Bourriaud and Jérôme Sans created, an institution which is open until midnight every day, an institution where you can not only see exhibitions, but you can have also a social activity, is completely changed, I think, the whole contemporary art scene. There is also a very important change, is the fact that lots of art centers developed in the suburbs of Paris. And more now, cities want to create art centers in the suburbs of Paris. And it completely changed the way Paris and the suburbs were articulated, in the sense that people didn't cross this peripheric belt, which is this motorway that circles Paris and that really cuts the center of Paris from the rest of the region. The fact that there were new places, very innovative, very much into showing emerging artists, avant-garde program, cutting-edge exhibitions. I think that this really changed the relationship that Parisian people had with the, so to say, outside of Paris.